I'm walking without you. It's never been this way. I'm walking without you now. Oh, no.
To religious trauma.
Oh, it goes down smoother when you say that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's start with give me your name, your age, and a few little details about your life.
Yeah, my name's Joshua Thompson. 25 years old, and I am interested in discovering what is very meaningful to me. I grew up very religious, so that's why I'm here. And I'm interested in becoming a voice actor. And that's kind of like a new development. It's in its baby stages, and I don't have a lot of practice other than just always having a random character that will pop into conversation and start talking like this or whatever, you know. I just thought, and obviously like the London accent is low-hanging fruit, but yeah, there's always someone that can come into my my being that says that has a little bit more access to like flow and like sort of stream of consciousness. And once I tap into that accent or that like character, expressing becomes a lot more easy, you know, than as Joshua. So that's one of the ways that I find you know, comedic relief or riffing with friends is just like, you know, getting into a character and seeing where that goes. So
how young were you when you started like exploring different characters and being like the funny kid?
Funny Kid is different. Yeah, it was different than the characters for sure.
Okay.
Funny Kid was, I always wanted to be able to make people laugh.
Yeah.
And I never could as a kid. I would accidentally be funny, but not in the ways that I wanted to be funny, you know? So I remember, like 10 years ago now, I lived with my whole family, but specifically my brother in the basement, Jordan, who I think you've interviewed.
Yes.
And so we had a TV down there, and I didn't know that he was smoking pot at this point. But we were watching Family Guy. He was blazed. I had no idea. And
were you allowed to be watching Family Guy?
I don't know. It was kind of like hands off at that point. You know, it was like everything was kind of up in the air. We were no longer evangelists, and everything was kind of like loosening up. But just because that's kind of how it goes as people get older, I think. But so he was watching Family Guy and just cracking up, and I noticed that like I have such an admiration for him that I was like really absorbing like how the joke structure worked, how just how that all went down, and then I started, I don't know, I had like one kind of like witty remark, and you know, people laughed, or and it all kind of went, the humor kind of went from there, you know. But trauma related, there was this one time that I was getting spanked, and my siblings were all there, and I like kind of like reacted in a way that was funny because I was trying not to like cry, and so I was like, ooh, you know, and like made like a funny noise, and they started laughing, and then I started laughing, and I got all stoked about it, and then I got spanked again for that, and so then that was like a less funny.
Oh, for sure.
that was when I was like less funny. But the characters, I remember at a really young age, I would be hanging out with either somebody that had a specific way of speaking or being, and after they would leave, I would notice that like my inner voice was their voice. And so I have always been able to kind of like tap back into how that was for me, like how somebody sounded to me, because like I sound that way in my own head for a little while, and I actually had to like figure that out. I had a moment where I was like, holy shit, that's like not my voice, you know? So I had to kind of like put that, like, make that distinct and understand that, okay, like, I'm taking on how I think other people are in an internal way, and I had to kind of like get what that was. And then I was left with the ability to mimic people, sometimes.
Tell me about what your experience was growing up in a gospel group. Is that what you would call it?
Yeah, family band, gospel group,
Christian family band.
Yeah,
Tell
like
me about that.
A Baptist.
Yeah.
Baptist evangelists. Yeah, it's interesting. I know that it's what's interesting to me about that is like looking at the different stages of development that each kid was in. So Jordan, Jake, and Bethany took like the brunt of the musical responsibility because they were the oldest. They could absorb the most information. And I kind of found myself always kind of sinking back to the kind of the background there. So I feel like they had a lot more pressure to like be involved in a certain way, and sort of like the family business was dependent on it. And I appreciated that because I didn't have to, I didn't have to come up to the forefront, which was cool for me because I didn't feel super safe, So I was kind of, for context, I was kind of like, I felt at least kind of like a black sheep in my family growing up. I think they would agree, but that's how it occurred to me. And so it was kind of rare that I let myself open up with anybody. And one day at a church that I don't remember, during a rehearsal, we were singing a song and I started to feel the spirit of it. I was starting to feel really like the gratitude, the wonder, the excitement, and the sort of innocence and aliveness come online.
Yeah.
And all I remember is sort of like letting that take me away with my eyes closed, and kind of came back to consciousness with like my family laughing. And it appeared to me that they were laughing at me. And I think I was like out of key, or something was, maybe it was just that they were surprised that I was singing loudly, and that is how one of the inner protectors was born for me, was like, and we're gonna never show anyone that ever again. We're never gonna be vulnerable like that again. And so I stopped singing with them. I started running the sound system, and just sort of like any chance I could get to get further and further into the background, that's what I would do. The less responsibility I could take on, the less people looking at me or watching me, the better. For until now, until like the last couple of years, I've been trying to, with like therapy, with, trying to live a more fulfilling life, trying to like bring some of that back, in a safe way. So,
and what does that look like in practice to work on that?
Right now, what it looks like is having some structure, working on something 3 times a week, something artistic 3 times a week, and starting to look into like voice acting. Like that's my avenue forward, is just like to try and allow myself to know that I'm safe and to go for something, whatever it is. And right now, like that's the first thing that popped into my head, and so that's what I'm gonna go for.
Love that.
Yeah. But yeah, the whole experience was rather weird, The day-to-day life was show up at a church parking lot, unpack the bus, which was like a 40-foot long mobile home, like travel bus, and set up speakers, set up the sound system, set up like all the different power, refill water, and like and all that stuff. And then it would be like, Sunday night service. We would sing as a family, and then, my parents would have a song together or something, and then, however many, probably like usually like 9-10 songs, something like that. And then my dad would usually preach, and then we would, visit with everybody after the church, sell CDs, pack everything up, usually within a day or two, and then be on the road for anywhere from like a few days to a week to get to the next location. And it was like that for, some number of months out of the year for about 5 years. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we'd be on the road for like 2.5 months, sometimes longer, sometimes it would be less, so it kind of varied, but that was the day-to-day was just like kind of church parking lot to church parking lot. Mm-hmm. There were a couple times like singing that I was really like felt I think what people would call like the spirit. But that wasn't really welcome in that part of Christianity. Like the really feeling the emotion of it and the gratitude and all that sort of stuff wasn't as in my mind, or it didn't occur to me that it was as sought after as like being a good Christian and like being like upright and being very how do you say it? Just being appropriate, being appropriate and doing the rules kind of how they're supposed to be done. Mm-hmm.
When you say that part of the church, what kind of churches are we talking?
Just more fundamental, more fundamental Christian, more how you would imagine like the Southern Hemisphere, or not the hemisphere, but like the Southern states. When you get into like kind of military church, that was kind of the vibe. So a lot of buzz cuts, a lot of like straightforward American loving people, kind of a lot of those values were together.
Is there like a specific church that occupies like your childhood memory as like a church that you spent a lot of time in?
Yeah, my grandfather's church. Yeah, that's where we went for the majority of my life before traveling. Mm-hmm.
What are some of your biggest memories of that church?
There was this one guy named Brother Phil Kidd, or actually Dr. Phil Kidd. I do not think he has a doctorate. I would highly doubt that he has a doctorate. But he's one of the most memorable characters from my childhood because he was all made up stories about people that have died and like came back and told their story of hell, or sort of, he had a really violent sort of way of sharing. He would get a ton of people at the altar, because he shares and screams into the microphone about like damnation and stuff like that. And he every once in a while I'll look up one of his like little bits on YouTube or whatever like that to remind myself like what a crazy world I was in.
Do you think you'd ever make a character based on Brother or Dr. Phil?
I may or may not already have that character. Yeah, he's locked in, and yeah, he's like.
You don't want to debut some material, do you?
Let me see if I can tap in. He's sort of like. Now aren't we all a little bit like snakes, slithering around, seeking out whom we may devour, the inner web, the web of evil, the web of Satan, So it's kind of like that, sort of like, making like grand gestures. And again, I think my best work is done when there's no cameras, I get used to that. But
right.
Yeah, there's been a couple times that I've gone off in like a car with like my siblings or something like that, and we'll be laughing a lot.
Damn.
Yeah.
Is this gentleman dead?
He's alive and well, and you can actually find a picture of him with like Confederate flag boxing gloves, like ready to fight evil.
Lovely.
That's my favorite. I've sent that to a couple people in my life because it's just fucking hilarious. He's like balding, and he's like super serious about what he's doing, but he just looks like he looks crazy, man. And I'm like, I don't understand. Yeah, and like I don't understand how a lot of the people in that church were like really loving people, loving people. Like my grandparents are really loving people, and that's what's weird about church is like you can have like people that are, I think, pretty generally good, but if there's such a dogmatic structure that no one would dare to like, say that the pastor of that revival or whatever you want to call it, it would just be insane for anyone to have a problem with what they're saying, in that culture. So, you have like a very hateful person that uses that position of power, which I think you see a lot. Mm-hmm. What I thought was really cool about Christianity is it brought a lot of people together to create meaning out of life, to create a meaningful life. And so I feel like there's sort of like a vacuum right now as people are like maybe drifting away from Christianity or like away from those structures that provide such a meaningful existence for people. And I think that there's room for like a new, maybe more integrated version of what's meaningful and like how to live a life that's like fulfilling, So I'm really interested in just like living a fulfilling life and discovering the part of me that is like true to my core and trying to let that bloom somehow. Mm-hmm.
Do you think there is a God in some form?
I think that everything is connected. I think everything is connected, and I think there's consciousness in like all of the universe. So I mean, I guess yes. Mm-hmm.
But in like a
deity
flows, like a specific.
I don't know. I don't know. I think that there are things that people have experienced for ever since humans have been around that have pushed them to like lean towards grasping more and creating larger contexts for the world that we live in and like what living is. And I think there's something really magical and mysterious about that. And I feel like God is sort of like the placeholder for consciousness as it gets to understand itself, So without trying to sound like an egomaniac who's like, I'm God, I think that God is probably an experience that is not outside of us,
Sure.
Yeah, and probably has more facets than we would imagine, There was a lot of stuff that was off limits as far as like what you're allowed to watch. It has to be some version of like Christian based. And for me, it was less about the rules and it was more that my life was just completely different than everyone in my culture, Mm-hmm. So it wasn't, I couldn't have long hair. I couldn't wear jeans to Sunday church. My sisters had to wear culottes instead of shorts or whatever.
What is that?
Culottes are like a mixture of like, they're like skirt shorts. Uh-huh. So they're just like, they look like a really long skirt, but they're, because you can't like expose the knee and women can't wear pants and
right.
Men can't have like rings and necklaces and earrings and there's just like a lot of random things, but like really it wasn't the rules. It was like that I was homeschooled, living on a bus.
Yeah.
No access to peers besides the church. And to be honest, there's like a disconnect of, it was more like that access to culture was so much less, like access to just like the regular world, like the community outside of the church was so limited that was more so impactful than the rules, I think. Yeah. I think, I try to catch up on as much stuff as I can, like so I can understand what people are referencing, but I think nothing super, there was nothing super like, oh, I wish I could do this, but I just can't because of the rules, It was more so like, I just feel a bunch of rules. I feel like I don't know if I step here, if this is going to be okay or not. So I ended up only doing what I could really see other people doing to make sure that I wasn't going to get punished for messing up, And I think that created a identity that was sort of subdued. Mm-hmm. So trying new things and being like allowing my creative expression out, that's been the journey.
Yeah.
Because I learned for so long that I could just, if I could see someone doing it and like they're not getting in trouble, like I know that's allowed. But there were so many rules that didn't make sense to me at the time that I was afraid to step outside of that. you know? So my focus has just been on not repressing urges or desires when they do show up. I'm like, okay, I can explore this. And I don't have to know if somebody else has done it and gotten in trouble or whatever, you know?
And your whole family kind of deconstructed religion. Was it kind of around the same time, or was it how long of a process was that?
Yeah, I think so. I'd have to talk to my mom and dad. But I think around the time we moved here was the beginning. We moved here in, I think, 2008 and to help start a church, but it was a different type of church. You know, it wasn't a King James Version Bible preaching fundamental church. It was like a little bit more new age, a little bit more open. And I think that was the beginning of the deconstruction. But I think that the kids kind of led the way, and then my parents followed. And they might have it differently, you know, but it seemed like they were losing access to relationships with the older siblings. And inside of that started to wear down the rigidness, you know, because it's really hard to start to feel your kids like being distant, you know?
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. I find a lot of times I find myself like in conversation with my dad, kind of in like a similar area, you know, of like deconstruction or talking about life. And I feel really thankful that that gets to be the relationship. Because I know for a lot of people that leave or deconstruct that, then they also have family members or people in their community that hold on real tight. So that's the bright side.
And your grandpa's a retired pastor, is that correct?
Yeah, both of them.
Both grandpas.
Yeah.
Right. How is your relationship with them?
It could be better. It could be better. It's good. It's good. I think it's good, but I think that there's like they were actually just in town to visit, and I, you know, we were trying to connect, and yeah, I think it can be hard to feel like you understand someone's language, but they don't understand your language. So sort of like feeling like I can hear where they are coming from feels good, but then to not really be able to speak in my own way and for that to be received like in a similar like manner can be kind of difficult to feel connected over. And we have a very loving relationship. It's just, I wouldn't say it's super deep. You know, like there's love present, and there's tons of love and gratitude and appreciation between us, and how far we get to dive into that because of the different sort of like alignments there with religion. And even more than religion, just sort of like relationship to life. It can be a little bit difficult. It's a little bit of a dance. But overall it's good, and I'm excited to see like maybe what shifts even moving forward from here too.
Anything else that you want to talk about? Like anything that's there, either we touched on previously and didn't go deep enough, or something that's been on your mind?
I don't think nothing's coming to mind. Yeah, nothing's coming to mind. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I've yet to be successful with that question, so don't feel bad.
Yeah, well, actually, now that you say that, if we had a second to talk about the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Yeah, tell me about him.
Really good guy, kind of like a cool uncle, as I've said before. Really just wants you to be on the good side, on the good team. So
Uncle Jay.
Uncle Jay he's got your back. He'll let you smoke a cigarette.
Smoke a J.
But you got to stop after that.
After one?
Yeah, just one.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Damn. Well, I really love you, man.
I love you too, dude.
Thanks for talking.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Well, thanks, buddy.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm walking without you. It's never been this way. I'm walking without you.